Mr. K. Nandakumar is the founder and managing director of the Chemtrolls Group. Started in 1975, Chemtrolls is one of India's leading solutions provider in process analytics, flow and terminal automation, environment monitoring, process measurements, steam conditioning solutions, and utility management. A chemical engineer from Government Engineering College, Trichur, Kerala, Mr. Nandakumar worked with Cochin Refineries and Fertilizers and Chemicals Travancore Limited before embarking on his entrepreneurial venture, Chemtrolls. In his highly successful career spanning over 4 decades, he has worked in functions as diverse as refinery operations, process engineering, project management, sales and marketing, strategic planning, business development, and finance and corporate management. Over the years, Mr. Nandakumar expanded Chemtrolls and incorporated several diversified and joint venture companies. Today, the Chemtrolls Group comprises several companies at various stages of their growth trajectory, moving at an accelerated pace towards great success. I'm delighted to invite Mr. K. Nandakumar to the stage. May I please request Mrs. Bindu Bordhon to present the green plant and memento to Mr. Nandakumar. Thank you, Bindu, for doing the honors.
Good afternoon. I now invite Mr. Robin Banerjee. He is the CEO of Caprihance India Limited and Chairman of Western India Corporate Governance Committee, CAI. Mr. Robin. Mr. Robin Banerjee is the President and CEO of Caprihance India Limited. He is also a thought leader in ESG field. He authored 3 books on corporate governance. He served in leadership role at Hindustan Unilever, ArcelorMittal, Thomas Cook, SR Steel, and Suzlon Energy. He is a member of the Board of Studies for Independent Directors, Indian Institute of Corporate Affairs, Government of India. He also served on the board of SME Chamber of India. He is also the Vice Chairman of Maharashtra State Council and Chairman of the Western India Corporate Governance Committee for the Confederation of Indian Industry, CII. Mr. Banerjee is a Chartered Accountant, Cost Accountant, and Company Secretary, and has a Master's in Commerce. Mr. Banerjee. I now invite Mr. Gautam Chakravarti. Gautam is a visiting faculty at ICFA Business School, former ED, Blackstone, India. Mr. Gautam Chakravarti is a visiting faculty at ICFA Business School, Mumbai, and Pune campus. He has been engaged in several diverse activities. He is an independent director on the board of 2 companies, a member of the management council of a reputed firm of architects, and a trustee and honorary treasurer of the Indian Cancer Society. In his former career, he worked in leadership position with Blackstone India, Billcare, Reliance Communications, Mahindra & Mahindra, and HUL. He is also associated with the Symbiosis Institute, Pune MIT, IMT Ghaziabad, and UPH, Jakarta, Indonesia. He is also associated with reputed HR consulting firms like Kincentric, Cerebrus, SHL, and E&Y Human Capital Advisory Practice as resources for their consulting projects in leadership development and executive assessment. Gautam has very glorious past in academics. BSc, 4th rank in the university. Masters in economics, 1st rank in the university. PGDM IIM, Ahmedabad, rank holder and secured gold medal. Gautam. I now invite Ms. Radhika Piplani, Senior Economist, Yes Bank Limited. Ms. Radhika is economist and Vice President at Yes Bank Mumbai, where she specializes in analyzing country macro trends for India and Asia. Ms. Pipalani previously worked for ANZ and N.C.E, internal for the United Nations SCAP, and also served as a legislative assistant to members of parliament, LAM. She was awarded the Yes Bank CEO Award for Excellence for the year 21-22. She also received the award for India's 30 most influential economists by the Institute of Certified Chartered Accountants, Boston, in the year 2022. She obtained an MSc in Economics from the Terry School of Advanced Studies after completing her BA in Economics from Lady Sri Ram College for Women, Delhi University, New Delhi. Radhika. Now, Mr. Vineet Nahata, Founder Director, Powergill Treasuries Incorporated. Vineet. Mr. Vineet Nahata is the Founder and Director of Powergill Treasuries Incorporated, a financial institution engaged in providing investment and portfolio management services in the fixed income universe to corporate treasurers. Treasury management is his forte, and the organization continuously strives to attain optimum leveraging of money power of compounding. I'm sure everybody would like to be close to you, sir. Powergill Treasuries has been a dominant player in the debt market since 2005, catering to over 1,000 plus institutional and corporate as well as retail investors. Powergill Treasuries has been the pioneer in introducing novel, innovative concepts in treasury management. The game-changer investment solution of repo deals in GSEC and corporate debts in corporate and treasuries as well as institutions is the hallmark of fixed income. Popularization of InvITs, a fixed debt alternative to PF trust, is a milestone. Mr. Vineet Nahata is the convener national of the Board of Council for ASSOCHAM, apart from being a part-time member. Mr. Vineet. This topic, the first topic of this, is a very, very critical topic, especially for India with 1.4 billion people, striving for economic freedom, development of the country to the third or fourth position in the shortest time. In the process of, after the independence, the 75 years of achievements, government also came out with the Amrit Kal to be completed by 2047 when we are 100. So government also brought up a lot of initiatives. Mr. Mundra in the last inaugural session has spoken about various initiatives government has done in achieving this, in attaining this. And he also said there are some pitfalls naturally in every society, that pitfalls is that has to be addressed and found out some solutions for that. In that process of achieving 2047 aim, in fact, government had various bodies is also invited suggestions from members. What is your vision for India 2047? I am sure that many of you have responded. What is your vision for 2047? When I got this question, I was also looking for a couple of days to search for what should be the vision for India at 2047. With 1.4 billion people in 2020s, which could be anywhere between 1.6 by 2047. It was a difficult question to look at. So I was looking whether I can answer that question in terms of GDP. If so, what could be? And I made a lot of, because it's a 25 years, what could be the GDP from, which is hovering around 3.5 for the last 60 years. How could be for a population which could be anywhere to 1.5 to 1.6. It was not an easy task for me. And I went through different calculations and still I could not get an answer. But I felt Probably I should not look at GDP because it could have various variants. So I arrived at a figure for an alternate for per capita income. What could be the per capita income which is hovering around $2,000, $1,850, $1,900 now for an aspiring population? And I arbitrarily fixed a figure and I started working on. Somewhere I said we need to have 15% growth year on year or 12% growth year on year, 16% year on growth. I knew it's very, very difficult to achieve. Yet, I thought I should project something then. I put up a figure of $10,000 per capita income for India by 2047 with approximately around 1.55 or 1.6 billion population. I knew it's a challenge, but I thought I should aspire for our brothers and sisters to have $10,000 in their hands for a per capita income, knowing very well it's a big challenge. So I knew probably I made a mistake, but yet I thought I sent that. And yet, because I sent something which I felt that much beyond my imagination, but you won't believe, around a month back, I got a report from ENY. And ENY in their report says they have also projected $10,000 per capita income. So I felt relieved, though I was at pains when I initially put up $10,000 GDP. What I want to say that the various factors we have put in, we said we wanted to become $5 trillion 2025, $10 trillion 2030. These are all aspirational figures. But the fact is that the accompanying word in that topic, that's where I am coming, sustainable growth, sustainable development. There are various factors for sustainable growth and sustainable developments. But I know the fundamentals of sustainable growth is coming into three P's: people, planet, and of course the profit. Everything centers around that. So when I look back, or when I again think in all that, we have to focus on these basic three requirements of people, planet, and profit. And of course, now ESG has come up. So there are many, I would say, specific areas we need to focus on. But I felt there are 6 critical areas or 6 critical accelerators which could be driving us that $10 trillion maybe by 2030 or 2033 or even 2028. When I look again on that, what is the $10 trillion and what is today's $3.5 trillion? When I bifurcate that, service comes around 62%. Manufacturing still hovers around 14%. Maybe the economists will say that it may be slightly more. But I think it's around 14 to 15%. It was around 18%, which has dropped down over the last 4 or 5 years. Share of manufacturing in GDP. Then comes, of course, service, 66%, and the agriculture, 14, 15%. Along with that, of course, the construction and other areas is coming around another 10 to 12%. For a country like India, which is developing with that amount of population, I personally believe the sustainability comes from manufacturing. It's not that I am in the manufacturing build, because I personally believe manufacturing gives multifold employment. Because in the population, if you look at nearly 60% is, or 65% is below the age of 35, 36. Looking for employment or looking to become entrepreneurs. So they need to certainly be handholds. So if they need to have, we need to certainly say that, because employment is a critical factor. So in the employment is a critical factor, we need to look at manufacturing is one of the critical areas which should have, for any developing economy, in my opinion, is ideally 30% of the GDP or at least 25%. So I personally believe, along with 10 trillion GDP, we need to enhance our manufacturing share in GDP, which is around 14-15% to 25% over a period. It may not be possible to achieve 10 trillion economy time, but maybe slightly more. Government has certainly put attention on enhancing it to 25%. if not at 10 trillion, maybe over a period of 15 or 20 trillion. By 2047, government's focus is manufacturing should have at least 25% of the GDP. So when I look at it in this area, manufacturing is one of the critical aspects. Along with that, there are opportunities and challenges. One of the opportunities is demographic dividend. So demographic dividend gives because with so much population and less than 65% below the age of 38, 36 and looking for employment. And the most important is women empowerment. 50% of the population is women. Unless we bring up women to that level, we can't achieve. So one of the critical role that we need to be under demographic dividend is women empowerment. And along with that, ESG comes into environment, societal and governance. Of course, my fellow eminent panelists will speak on that. Even in corporate governance, one of the topic is the biodiversity in the board with the women. Then of course other areas is in the manufacturing digitization, along with the world-class quality. And of course, when I say infrastructure for manufacturing, all the paraphernals related to R&D, technology, funding, timely funding, logistics, maintenance, management, skilling, everything comes in. Having this introductory remarks, I know I have a very, very eminent panelists. So they will certainly deliberate on this, what could be the challenges and what is the opportunities coming in the coming years. With this, I invite Mr. Robin Banerjee. Please have your words. Oh yes, you can.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. We are talking in terms of, thank you, Nandakumarji, thank you, the wonderful panelists. I have unfortunately, a meeting to be attended, which is a board meeting, which was an urgent one, so I will have to go. I'm sorry for that, which is not very good, and not to partake in the panel discussion fully. But just to tell you what perhaps my thoughts are, we are discussing $10 trillion Indian economy. This was not even discussed perhaps 6 months back. There has been so-called central Indian economy case saying that, you know what, we can become a 10 trillion. The years vary between some 2035, some say 2037, but of course, the first $1 trillion took 60 years for India to become. First trillion took 60 years. Second $1 trillion took 7 years. The third $1 trillion took 5 years. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are saying that every 2 years, $1 trillion. Now that's not going to happen unless we do something differently. We have to think big, different. And these are my thoughts, which I presume all of us need to work on. To cut the long story short, India, well, there are 4 factors of production. We all know that economics, and there are economists sitting on the dais, and many of you are economists here. There are 4 factors of production: land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. Sometimes we say organization. If you're a little boy, you will read organization, but actually it's entrepreneurship. Now look at these 4 factors of production. What is it we need to do to make India a $10 trillion economy? Land. God is not going to create more land. And as Nandakumarji just said, manufacturing is the hub of a country to progress, because that's where you produce goods, and ultimately services comes out of manufacturing. In order to do that, you need land. Where will the land come from? There are 2 sources, broadly. There are industrial development corporations in India, like we are in Maharashtra, there is something called MIDC, Maharashtra Industrial Development Corporation. These are areas which has infrastructure, which is ready for industry to grow, and yet, ladies and gentlemen, you will be surprised to know that about 30 to 40% of land inside so-called industrial development parks are either vacant or underutilized or stuck up in some bank, N.C.E or IBC situation. So this land needs to be unlocked. Number 2, there are public sector undertakings which has huge land. One example, railways. Railways have 43,000 hectares of land. And some of it is in absolutely tony cities like Mumbai, Kolkata, Delhi. This land needs to be utilized. It's lying idle. And we need to get this land. We are thinking we will become solar, but for getting solar power, you need land. And this is land which is available with public sector. So first, we have to unlock land. We need to focus on unlocking land, and I don't hear or see much discussion on this. One, land. Number two, labor. How do we unlock labor? We are as good as our people. Labor has two components, to my mind. One, the new labor code must get implemented in the country. You will say, why new labor code? What's so big about it? New labor code, ladies and gentlemen, is to cut in one sentence, it's a hire and fire policy. That's what they say. Employers can hire whenever you want. You don't want people, get rid of them, no problem. But you have to pay all their indirects, which is provident fund, gratuity, pension, everything needs to be paid. What a wonderful policy. People, the entrepreneurs don't employ labor because they don't know if tomorrow the times are bad, what do I do with them? So who suffers? The labor suffers. Who suffers? The industry suffers. We are not able to get labor. And the second is, we are as good as our people. Skill. Skill is very important. Now, for the first time, the good news, ladies and gentlemen, is in the central budget, union central budget, for the first time ever, the union budget this time has culled out 3,500 crores for skill development. This item was zero for the last 75 years. Of course, it was in other heads, education, wagara, wagara, but to focus on exact skill development, they have also announced for about 1,000 crores to invest in enhancing the skill of the handicrafts, people who are doing handicrafts. In totality, the government in this union budget has allocated 9,500 crores towards enhancing human capital. This is apart from the budget which they always do for education. Skill is something we need to focus upon. Land, labor. Unless we do that, $10 trillion is not going to happen. Third is capital. Land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship, I said. Capital. India needs capital, and that capital has to come from outside. We don't have enough capital. We are a poor country. It's a fact. We need capital from outside. Outsiders needs to invest in India. When will outsiders invest in India? Outsiders likes stability. We need to have a political stability, political system which is stable, which fortunately currently it is. Two, the rules and regulations must be stable too. We can't have rules and statutes coming up with retrospective effect. No one likes that. No investor likes that. What if tomorrow you come out with a law putting in capital gains tax from last 10 years? No one likes. So we must say every law will be prospective and not retrospective. In terms of, so in capital, we have to enhance and encourage outsiders to coming in, otherwise $10 trillion is not going to happen. Money begets money. And the fourth is entrepreneurship. We will say entrepreneurship, Indians are entrepreneurs. Great entrepreneurs we are. Yes, we are. But as I said, we need helping hand. And this entrepreneurship, to get helping hands, to get others to partake in Indian entrepreneurship spirit, we need good corporate governance. No one likes corporates who are fraudsters. No, they don't like it. And it is not possible. So we must have and depict and display that there is good corporate governance. Currently, there is something is going on in the country which is not good. Hopefully, the dark clouds or the shades of dark clouds will get cleared soon. But unless that happens, there will always be this doubt that can we invest in India? Is everything kosher? Is everything fine? Land, labor, capital, entrepreneurship. I know I'm running out of time. I have already run out of time, by the way. There are three more small little things I must mention because otherwise we can't make $10 trillion. We can't get. The next one, ladies and gentlemen, is exports. India's export is about $750 billion. This year we are going to be between 750 and 800 billion. That is 20% of our GDP. No country in the world can become the richest and the best unless the export intensity goes up. It is good to have low exports because the country is growing through their own demand. But if something happens to the country tomorrow, then we have to grow from demand from outside. And exports entails imports. We are an oil deficit country. We don't have petroleum products. We have to necessarily import energy sources necessarily import for the next 20, 25, 30 years, till of course renewable energy takes over, which obviously have been discussed in the morning and shall continue to be discussed, but that's not going to be enough to make us $10 trillion. Therefore, our export intensity from 20% needs to go up to 25%. Very important. There are other steps can be taken, but we need to, the government and we all have to focus on exports. Otherwise, $10 trillion not possible. We have to hitchhike on the global demand. And the next one, all this is good, $10 trillion. How will it happen? There has to be infrastructure. Who makes infrastructure? Government. Where will the government get money from? Where is the money? Government doesn't print money. Printing money doesn't help us anyway. As you know, printing money only adds to inflation. So what will happen? Taxation. India's tax to GDP ratio, that means tax intensity of tax to GDP is 8%, 8. That's not good enough. The European Union, the tax to GDP ratio is 27% and US is 19%. Just for you to remember, US is 20%, Europe is 30%, we are 8%, let's say 10%. Not good. Unless taxation goes up, how will the government get money? How will the infrastructure take place? How will the roads and ports will happen? How will we become $10 trillion? And what's the solution? How we will become enhanced tax? You said we are already taxed, so much of tax. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, there is a huge, huge possibility of tax to GDP ratio. Agriculture needs to be getting taxed. Unless agriculture income is not taxed, India, to my mind, it will be an upheaval task to get more money to get into infrastructure. And the last point, so I did talk about export intensity needs to go up from 20% to 25%. The tax to GDP ratio, which is 8% today, needs to double to at least 15%. Half of Europe, maybe half of European Union. And the last one, we cannot become world power $10 trillion unless our legal system becomes appropriate. Justice delayed is justice denied. Court cases in India lingers for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. No one will invest in India unless they know if there is a problem, I can get justice in 6 months' time. There has to be a start date and end date. Unless the legal system, the time it takes gets fixed, $10 trillion will remain a big dream. So land, labor, capital organization, export intensity, tax to GDP ratio, and a good, reliable, timely legal system. I think these are the 7 pillars on which India can become a $10 trillion, and I suppose we will. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Robinji, for your very enlightening talk. Thank you. So now I invite Mr. Gautam Chakrabarty for his introductory remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My thanks to the organizers to give me an opportunity to participate in this discussion. In my view, limited view perhaps, the theme for our forum is wonderful and energizing because as Indians, it's a matter of great pride that we are now counted in the global economy and global politics as significant. And no major issues can be discussed globally without hearing us out. I think that's a significant difference to a person like me who grew up, who was born in 1953 and had grown up in an environment when India did not have that much of, to use a Bombay language, bhav in the entire global economy. The role that we have played in the recent global pandemic as a major source of anti-COVID vaccines, we have helped 85 countries. That's a big number. And we have produced and administered 225 crore doses of vaccine. That's no limited feat. Even larger countries of the world have not been able to do that. And post-COVID, the way our economy is driving the resurgence globally is something which is worth noting. There are opportunities in all directions of human endeavor for us Indians, be it information technology, healthcare, financial inclusion, defense industries, space technology, social welfare, urban development, agricultural research and productivity, and so on and so forth. But I would like to bring a reality check to this audience. Don't get lost in euphoria. We must recognize that for India to achieve the $5 trillion or $10 trillion in GDP, only if the GDP grows at a consistent rate of 9%. Today we are talking of 7% and we are struggling. So if we have to reach 9%, we have to do a hell of a lot. One of the areas with the chairman of our forum also mentioned is to increase the share of manufacturing in our GDP from the current 15% to 30%. Exports, we account for only 2% of the global exports. So that is clearly an idea which both the chairman as well as Robin, my friend and colleague, also mentioned. So we have to change this. And for that, manufacturing productivity has to sort of achieve a quantum jump. We have to look at assimilating what is called, some of you I'm sure know about it, what is called Industry 4.0 in our systems and processes. What is this Industry 4.0? Industry 4.0 refers to the intelligent networking of machines and processes for industry with the help of information and communication technology. It is an industrial revolution which is called the fourth industrial revolution, which is currently in progress. It has led to efficient networking or interconnection of systems, also known as cyber physical production systems, the man-machine systems, the development of smart manufacturing and factories. We'll talk more about it in the second part of my communication, where I'll give you some examples. This current revolution has dramatically changed how people work. It allows a more efficient way of individuals working by pulling individuals into smarter networks. The manufacturing industry world over is getting almost entirely digitalized, making it easier to pass the information to the right people at the right time. This Industrial Internet of Things, IIoT, has 4 key elements: cloud computing and big data, cyber physical systems, machine learning and AI, and the Internet of Things. And considering that India is a leading player in information technology, this is an area which looks like something which we can attack and we can win the game here. Another important aspect of the fourth industrial revolution is sustainability. Mr. Carsten of Phoenix Contact elaborated on that very significantly. And sustainable development has 3 pillars: environment, economic, and social sustainability. So that's something which we have to look at if we have to achieve the 5 trillion or the 10 trillion goal. There are obviously some challenges in Industry 4.0. First is the big gap in technical skills. And that is where, as an alumni association of a premier educational institution and institution of higher learning in our country, we must dwell upon it as to what we can contribute to building up that level of technical skills in the entire industry, in the entire country. And the second challenge in all this, when we talk of Industry 4.0, is data privacy and sensitivity. Everyone is talking about data. Mr. Mundra said that, is the data the new opium? Possibly, but data in your hands is one thing, But data it may be opium, but data in somebody else's hands is poison, is very lethal. So therefore, that is an area which, as we talk about Industry 4.0, we must be careful, and that should move hand in hand. If I may summarize, which are the challenges that I see in reaching this goal? First, increasing investment. My colleagues also mentioned towards that. Improving productivity, and that is the whole thrust of Industry 4.0 that I mentioned. Improving education and health outcomes. You cannot grow an economy without social development. That is a given. People normally say if the economy grows, then you will get social development. Ladies and gentlemen, my submission is that these things have to move together. You cannot have economic development in a situation where most people are denied the benefits of that development, which is what social development is about. So both have to move together. Creating jobs, raising agricultural productivity, maintaining macroeconomic stability, managing global megatrends which will hit us, and last but probably the most important is improving governance. So these are the challenges which we have to address in our own ways. Now I come to probably a discordant note in whatever we have all been talking about so far. It's not fashionable in the contemporary world of technology to talk about agriculture. But I would draw your attention to a fundamental thought. Nations don't grow on empty stomachs. Some of you may even be aware of a similar thought, equally powerful metaphor made in Hindi. Bhukhe bhajan na hoye gopala. You cannot even pray on an empty stomach. So agricultural productivity is a fundamental area where we have to make a difference. The Green Revolution saved 1 billion lives from devastating hunger. More so because the Green Revolution not only fed the masses, but also built the fundamentals of sustainable prosperity for the society. Studies indicate, mind you, that a 10% increase in usage of higher productivity-driven farming practices contributes 10 to 15% growth in per capita GDP. So this is not some figment of somebody's imagination after the opium that we talked about after data, but it is something which is very, very crucial for getting what we want to get. Yes. More importantly, it will release precious labor which is required for building the infrastructure and the manufacturing. The last point which I would like to mention at this stage is urban development, which is an important aspect. For India to realize its vision of a 5 trillion economy by 2030, 4.5 trillion must be invested in national infrastructure by 2030. Timely and efficient implementation of this investment is critical to meet the challenges of a major socio-economic and demographic trend. By 2030, around 42% of India's population is likely to live in cities. And the number of metropolitan cities is estimated to increase from 46, which is the census 2011, to 68 in 2030. To make these cities livable and sustainable, citizens need efficient services, including transport, sanitation, and others. India, despite being number 5 in terms of GDP, ranks a lowly 70 out of 140 countries for infrastructure quality in the Global Competitiveness Index. I think I don't need to say further. I will, to highlight the importance, I'll just add one more point. how do I drive this? How do we drive this? Public-private partnerships are emerging as a very important strategy to drive urban development. Over the last few years, the government has rolled out several PPP programs for delivery of time-bound, high-priority public utilities. And most importantly, by mobilizing private capital, PPPs can free up scarce public funding for a range of critical services, irrigation, sanitation, health, and education. Thank you for now, but as Terminator said, I don't know how many of you remember Arnold Schwarzenegger's movies, I'll be back.
Hello everyone, thank you for having me here, and amidst this esteemed panel, it's my pleasure to be here. I'll keep it extremely short because I think what Rohin and Gautam sir have indicated, they're just so thorough with what can lead India to a 10 trillion that I'll keep it very short, and probably in the Q&A we can take things further. Whether we are able to reach 10 trillion or not is probably a little distant a goal. Let's do a SWOT analysis of India. Everyone knows what a SWOT analysis would be. Let me elaborate. SWOT means strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat. Let's segregate some of India's qualities into these buckets and then see whether we are able to even get to the goal of 10 trillion. And there would be many more, and I would love to get some of your thoughts onto this during the Q&A. Let's start with the strength. I think the biggest strength that India has is of cheap labor. Otherwise, most of the multinational companies which are coming here, whether it's for manufacturing or for services, they won't be here. No one denies the fact that India needs skilling, but at the end, even at the unskilled level, we need some bit of like raw labor to do those work. And India is at a great position to, get monetized in this front. Whether you look at construction sector, which is driving growth in India to some extent, the real estate, all of these things are interlinked with how cheap our labor costs are, and this is a great boon that India has. Yes, let's talk about demographic dividend now. We are in a phase where a lot of youth or a lot of population is in the working age or will be entering the working age, but this dividend will soon not be with us. So at that point of time, then there is a problem of dependency that comes onto the young population. Probably this is a distant, challenge 30 or 40 years down the line. But if we do not start developing, jobs for the youths 30 or 40 years down the line or currently, then the problem will just manifold. The other strength which India has and which the government has rightly been focusing on is making India self-sufficient. The Atmanirbhar Bharat or the PLI scheme, they are again, it's a distant dream to get India self-sufficient in all of these manufacturing schemes, but an essential scheme to put in place. So no one can deny the fact that this, at this point of time, is needed to make India into a self-sufficient economy. We all realize that this Ukraine war, COVID pandemic has resulted in upsetting a lot of supply chains. And what this has resulted in is deglobalization. So at that point of time, schemes like this is something which everyone should be looking forward to, and investments more so in the sunrise sectors like the electronics or probably the textiles, pharmaceuticals, chemicals. This is the need of the hour to make India into a self-sufficient and strong economy 10 years down the line, where we are thinking that it can even reach a target of 10 trillion. The next most important thing or a strength is cleaning of the balance sheet of the banks and fiscal consolidation, which is being done by the government. I am a representative of Yes Bank, so cleaning of bank balance sheet, no one else can understand it more than I do. So I understand that if the balance sheet cleansing wouldn't have happened the way the RBI or the government has taken this so seriously, probably we will not be even talking about a 5 trillion or a 7 or a 10 trillion. So strong balance sheets are of utmost importance if we want to look at a strong growth that India has the capability of incurring. Next is digitalization. A lot of us have already talked about it, so I will not delve on it much. But Investment in public infrastructure, digitalization is the key to success, and that is something which again the government has taken head on. Let's now come to the weakness. I've talked a little about the labor, but there is also another set of labor force, which is the informal labor force. The government is taking steps to, again, get a database of the informal labor force that is there in the economy. Again, a very difficult task, but something which is very much needed to formalize the economy a little. We can see the effects of formalization through a process called GST, where the government is earning more and more and more revenue. So in case these informal labor force can be brought into the net and some bit of formalization there can happen, either through job opportunities or through the vendor schemes which the government is coming up with, I think it will be a great boost to India and Indian government's revenue, and that is something which we will all be looking forward to. The next is upskilling. We have the new education policy that is coming up. Yes, everything boils down to execution. But as of now, at this point of time, the deadweight loss that we have all seen in terms of the pandemic years that have taken away the years which probably our children would be going to school, regular classes. So that is a deadweight loss which probably even coaching classes are not being able to replace. So I think this is something which we have to take it on board and then understand whether the new education policy can encompass all these shortcomings which we have faced, and then fine-tune it accordingly and see what is the next steps ahead. Again, something which the manufacturing sector faces day in and day out is a large logistic costs. This is something which, again, the COVID pandemic has brought forth. It's a major weakness that we have. Energy prices is something which aren't in our control. It's a lot of geopolitical things that go beyond, how much oil or natural gas pricing we are facing. But what we can do is probably how the transportation or the cargo or the freight prices, if they can be reduced to some extent. So these are things which the government should take care of. Again, last year we had the logistics policy in place by the government. Execution here again becomes the main key. And as I talked about, so there is a COVID-related deadweight loss. Even RBI in its study said that whatever loss that we have faced in terms of the GDP growth, we'll take 10 years to recover just that loss. Leave about, whether we have reached the pre-pandemic level of output or we've crossed past, or are we at a 7% or a 6.7 or a 6.2%. Let's leave all of that aside, but there is a deadweight loss which is weighing on the economy, and it will take at least 10 years to just cover that loss. So this is a weakness which all of us are facing, and we have to live with that. Opportunities, there are plenty, but just to start with, being from a bank, I can definitely say that the financial products have to be penetrated more into the rural areas and the semi-rural areas. Something which has not yet received the focus, because even financial institutions are targeting the base where they can get more profitability, where they can get higher revenue. But I guess somewhere down the line, we have to look a little bit more ahead from the profitability or revenue side. We have to look at places where there is a need to educate the people and create awareness on what insurance can do, what is life insurance, term insurance, health insurance, what are the benefits, what does it mean by saving just 1,000 rupees in your bank deposits and get probably 2,000 rupees after 5 years or 3 years down the line. So I think creating awareness for the rural masses is something where the opportunity lies, and a lot of NGOs are stepping into these areas, but still a lot needs to be done. Export potential, which Rohin talked about, is something which again we're not realizing. So yesterday I was there at a spice conference, and there is something called as geo-tagging of spices, which means that in case a product lands at my home, I can scan the product, see from where did this product come, which rural village was this product manufactured, look at the history and geography by just scanning the barcode. So this is something which US and Europe are taking forward, and they do not accept spices from India in case they're not geotagged. Now, in case we do not lead to some kind of awareness amongst the farmers or our traders that this is something which you should do, or you should start investing into this kind of digitalization, we are losing out on export markets. India is the largest spice trader. It has most potential than any other country, including China. Whether it's chilies, whether it's seeds, spices, you name it, and we have it all. But it's just that we have to target the audience correctly, and we have to do it in a digitalized fashion. And the marketing and branding is something which I cannot highlight more in today's world. The threats, this is the last, and then probably we can do a Q&A on this. There is a risk of over-tightening, not only in India, but also globally. Over-tightening in terms of interest rates. Again, we are not realizing now, because what we are seeing is inflation, or the prices are spiraling around 9%, 10%, 12%. But we are not realizing that this will lead to a lot of GDP loss or real output loss in times to come. There is usually a 3-quarter lag in terms of how your interest rate cycles react onto your real output. And this is something which we should all be fearful of. Probably we will not see a level of GDP that we saw in 2020. But will we see a level which we saw in 2008? Probably yes. So that is something which we should be mindful of and understand where should we stop, or how much of the inflation or growth trade-off can we as an economy bear, because in case we lose out on our real GDP growth to an extent, it will take a lot of time to recoup after the deadweight loss that we've seen from COVID pandemic. And again, the last threat that we have is of globalization as well as deglobalization. When I say globalization as well as deglobalization, because for us, we are still a lot dependent on global economy. A lot of our inputs come from different countries which we are not yet self-sufficient in. We impose a lot of import tariffs on a couple of import products, which if you talk to the manufacturers, they say that it's adding on to the cost, which is finally going on to the retail consumers. So this is something which we are not sure that, whether we should actually do so much of deglobalization that at the end it hurts us, or whether we should promote globalization and become dependent on the global economy, which again hurts us during such a COVID-19 or Ukraine war kind of situation. So this is something which is open for discussion, and here I rest my case. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Vineet Nahata. What I intend to do is to basically summarize or elaborate on some of the key takeaways which I have derived since the morning, listening to the various dignitaries and learned speakers. And what I think India needs to do to achieve the dream of becoming $10 trillion economic giant in, say, by 2035. Various initiatives have been taken by the government, the various ministries, be it Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Labor, and PMO, to achieve this gigantic dream of becoming economic superpower. Let me give you a few examples. There has been, we have been talking about manufacturing sector is not contributing to the optimum level in terms of GDP growth. There are various challenges which are plagued the manufacturing sector, and bottlenecks which need to be opened up. Now the Ministry of MSME has been working very hard to bring the small and medium manufacturers to the mainstream. The auto ancillaries, the various other small-scale industries, be it from the rural, the Tier 2 cities, or the mainstream urban areas. The MSME ministry has given them various incentives, funding, so that the level of employment which the MSME sector can generate is manifold, and it is much bigger than the organized sector. So this is one area which is going to contribute to a great extent in aiding the manufacturing base of the country. Second is, we have a new cooperative ministry now, headed by Mr. Amit Shah. Cooperatives do have a great potential. Dairying, fishing, agri-farming. These are the three industries which the cooperatives dominate, and of course sugar. The cooperatives, they have their own problems. The three or four main areas where they fail to compete with the other corporate giants, A happen to be marketing, B the management expertise, lack of adequate technology. Their technology which they adopt is not at par with they are not state of the art. There's a big gap. And the fourth and the most important is the focus of the government. Right now, there has been a special task force which has been set up to, say, capitalize the synergies between the cooperative sector and the corporate sector. Earlier, the corporate sector never used to think of the cooperative as a potential customer base. Now, this initiative is going to increase manifold the contribution of the cooperative sector in the manufacturing segment. The other point is artificial intelligence, machine learning, and drones. The government's focus is clear here, and availability of drones, etc., in various industries has been made accessible. This is going to go a long way in improving the productivity and getting these industries where the drone and the machine learning capabilities can be utilized to scale up to the international levels. One area where India has been seeing a silver lining is defense. Earlier, we used to import the entire gamut of defense machinery and the fighter planes, etc. Now, Hindustan, in our Indian PSUs, like Hindustan Aeronautics, Mazgaon Dock, Garden Reach Shipbuilders, Bharat Dynamics Limited, BEL, they have been instrumental in, through the Make in India initiative, to indigenize and produce world-class fighting equipment in the country, and they have been net exporters now. This happens to be a area where the Make in India initiative of manufacturing defense equipment indigenously is going to go a long way in A, earning foreign exchange for the country, and B, contributing to the manufacturing sector, because a lot of ancillaries are also involved in manufacturing of the defense equipment. The current Ukraine-Russia war has proved to be a blessing in disguise for India as far as the defense manufacturing is concerned. The other point is startup ecosystem. India happens to be the third largest startup ecosystem in the world. The G20 initiative and the startup ministry is going to be a game changer as far as the contribution or engagement of the youth is concerned, and to reap maximum demographic dividend. Infrastructure development, the National Infrastructure Pipeline and the Gati Shakti, these are the two initiatives which are going to go a long way in contributing towards the growth and development of the country and help achieve India's dream. I would like special mention to 2 points which the earlier speaker, Ms Radhika Piplani, had mentioned, which I also feel they happen to be of critical importance in, say, giving, which the government needs to clearly focus on and do something. One is the improving the financial literacy of the rural household. Most of the rural people, their savings are at stake. They get trapped in various Ponzi schemes like Narda, Sarda, just to name a few, and their hard-earned wealth is lost. Now, showing the government has given 2,000 rupees per se. The banking penetration in the rural area has increased manifold, and most of the lowest sector of the society people are getting 2,000 rupees by the government. Now, as an initiative, many NGOs have taken up the work of getting them introduced to sovereign gold bonds, making their demat account open, and making them invest in government securities as low as 2,000 rupees. So this happens to be a very important area where the savings of the rural household needs to be protected, and they need to be utilized in the development of the country. The other point which was mentioned was over tightening of interest rates. Our country happens to be one of the sweetest spots as far as the global investment hubs are concerned. We happen to be one of the very few countries where we have real rate of return positive. Our 10-year government security, the benchmark yield, the sovereign debt yield is around 7.4%, and our inflation is much lower. The CPI is 6.6%. So we still have around 2% real rate of return. Rest of the other economies, everyone has a negative growth of return. So we perceive that in times to come, India can become a major beneficiary of global funds, which is going to aid in our development. There is a global bond index of which India was supposed to become a part. Now, due to some reason, this has been delayed. Once India becomes a part of the global bond index, we expect around 2.5 lakh crores of foreign investment to come into the Indian sovereign government securities. This is going to again pave a way for channelizing debt funds from various central banks of global economies to have invested in India. This is other than the foreign direct investment. And this is going to give us the necessary vitriol and pool of funds so that we can deploy them in the economic development of the country. Thank you.
I'll move fast. I'll just talk first about my point on agriculture. We need a second green revolution. The first green revolution increased essentially the production of wheat and rice. We still import pulses, oil seeds, and edible oils, which is something which is unthinkable. Research shows that a 1% increase in agricultural value added per hectare can deliver 0.4% drop in poverty in the short term and 1.9% decrease in the longer term through improved wages for the farm labor and lower food costs. A significant increase in R&D investment is a valuable key to the progress which is underrated. The additional cost of this R&D, as you may be visualizing, is not humongous. We are talking of $5.5 billion only, which happens to be less than what Americans spend on ice cream every year. That kind of investment can make a difference. The impact is mind-blowing. The benefits of such investments over the next 3 decades, investments in agricultural R&D will be in excess of USD 2 trillion, implying $33 of social benefits for $1 of expenditure. And India can, this I'm talking about globally, and India can take a big share of its benefits, as I don't know how many of you have got a fix on it. The arable land area is 395 million acres in India, which is the second largest in the world after USA. So that is an opportunity which is staring us in the face, and we do not take advantage of it. India's gross irrigated crop area is 216 million acres, the largest in this world. We are sitting on a gold mine and we don't know. We are running after, euphoria or ephemeric opportunities. Urban development, we briefly talked about PPP. I just wanted to add to that recognizing the need for investment in municipal infrastructure, the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, has provided more than 10 billion in financing over 300 projects. and provided advisory services to cities in more than 60 countries over the past decade. In India, IFC has also partnered and on bankable PPPs focused on climate, social and economic inclusion. Interesting examples are the 1.5 gigawatt capacity Agarsh, Shajapur and Neemuch solar parks in Madhya Pradesh, which has smashed through the tariff floor as far as energy or power is concerned. A clear pipeline of national and municipal infrastructure projects with timelines will allow equity investors, lenders, and developers to plan better. A well-designed strategy with uniform guiding principles can help the country rapidly go ahead with urban development. We have talked a lot about how we will drive growth, and execution became an important issue. I will just highlight 4 pillars. First pillar, single national market. You consider the market before GST came in. 2/5 of the output, that is 40% of the output, and 85% of the jobs 5 years ago were in the informal cash economy. And we were talking about taxation. If you bring the whole economy as a part of the formal economy, the government's clout in terms of administering and recovering taxes will be phenomenal. What you see as 1,50,000 crores of indirect taxes will grow and it will be better. So therefore, that 8% has to grow up. That's what one of my colleagues here mentioned. So that's very important part in terms of the single national market. The second pillar of industrial growth is size. Industrial growth, while we may talk a lot about MSMEs, etc., very good, sounds good, but the growth has to come from the big guys. In India today, India's top firms generate 50% of corporate India's cash flows. 50% of the total cash flows coming only from these 20 companies. These are the companies which are going to put India on the $5 trillion map. Reliance, Tata's, Aditya Birla Group, some more focused giants, JSW and L&T. These are the kinds of companies which will make an impact. Mukesh Ambani says that he will cut price of green hydrogen to $1 per kilogram by 2030 from about $5 today. Mr. Carsten mentioned about green hydrogen as a very important part of the sustainability drive. Yes, there are worries about excessive corporate power, monopoly, and cronyism, etc., etc. But that can be solved, yes, that can be solved through good governance. The third pillar, technology, and in which India is at the forefront, information technology, and that has to be driven. But the last thing, all this does not necessarily account for the millions who are not part of the mainstream. And that is where India's exemplary record of digital welfare programs being run digitally has made impact. Payments have totaled 270 billion since 2017. From 1% of the GDP, it is about 3% of the GDP. Payments moving to the underprivileged sections of the society. That has to be also an essential part to support the growth. That's all I have to say. My only submission will be that the government's electoral success provides economic continuity, and that is very important for us to achieve whatever we are talking about. The pragmatic approach which the government has adopted, maybe not the best solutions, but if the second best solutions can be implemented successfully and effectively, that's much better than waiting for the perfect solution and not being able to do it. Karna kya hai? This is what I learned with 7 years in Reliance. What is to be done? So focus on the action. That's what it is. So I believe that the probability is in favor of our reaching the USD 5 trillion goal. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Gautam. Since I'm running short of time, we are running short of time. I must say that we are not able to have second round for the other panelists. I have some few questions which has come that I would like our members to address, or I myself try to come. The first question from Mr. Arunava Khan. How do you feel the role of R&D for a development of our country? Is there anyone who would like to develop R&D? I will talk on R&D, certainly, yes. R&D is very, very critical for any country to develop. If you really look at any country which has developed, they spend nearly 3.5 to 4% of GDP on R&D, whereas we spend hardly 0.6% of our GDP. So we need to focus on R&D, absolutely no other way. We need to be globally competitive. If we need to be globally competitive, we need to have hardcore research, development, and continuous innovation across the value chain. And in manufacturing, on an average, nearly 20 value chain comes in any manufacturing. So we need to have continuous innovation across. So R&D is absolutely must. And government also should support manufacturing companies or any companies going for R&D, whether industry or institutes, to have certain amount of financial incentive for them to enhance their outlay for R&D of concurrent. Along with R&D, what is critical is the industry-institute partnership. And that's where Jadavpur Alumni can certainly play a much bigger role to have that industry-institute partnership.
If I can add a little
second question.
If I can add a little, I think now the times are such that there needs to be creative disruption. The way we were functioning 20 years back or 30 years back, we will not be able to function in the same way 10 years hence, 20 years hence. There is a serious issue which a lot of us are missing, and that is climate change. Climate change is serious. As we are seeing every day, every newspaper is carrying some or the other issue with respect to climate change. We are seeing that the temperatures are rising, not only in February, but even in January, we had started feeling that the winter season is, going away from the north soon. And even in Mumbai, the temperatures were rising faster. The farmers are saying how their crops are, getting affected because of climate change. So your technology needs to change from the ground level to the topmost if you want to sustain for the next 20 or 30 years, or if you're even thinking of making India into a, much more growth-oriented economy going ahead.
To add to what Ratika said is, we had a program of ozone depleting chemicals elimination which we have done by 2010. Now just Montreal Protocol, Kilani amendment has come, whereby the HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons, also has to be replaced because they are found to be the global warming. So in the coming 10 years, we have put 15%. By 2047, we have to remove all the HFCs, 85% of all our air conditioning, all other cooling systems from. So it's a big challenge for manufacturing industries as well as for MSMEs. That's where the government or the international monetary funding has to help us, help the countries like developing to get into that manufacturing. I fully agree with what Radhika says, but the underlying point is monetary support, very, very essential for sustaining that level of international requirements. There is another question which has come from Mr. Bakchi. With current level of focus on Make in India, do you feel manufacturing share can cross 30% of GDP by 2030? If not, what can be done? Anybody would like to? Short, brief time.
The productivity-linked incentive scheme can be utilized for this particular a purpose. And then the one thing is there, the government's focus on improving this particular aspect of, say, to boost the manufacturing is clear. MSMEs as well as the large industries both happen to be on the limelight, and maximum support is on the way for them. Two big reforms or two game-changing, say, initiatives on the anvil, which say probably in 2 months or so you'll be able to see it. This is in collaboration with the G20 nations.
Thank you. It's still a big challenge to have manufacturing 30% by 2030. We need to certainly focus on that, because 30% of the GDP by manufacturing, we are talking of something around $3 trillion. And today our share is much, much lower. But we must focus on that. It is not that figure that how do we achieve to that sustainable growth in terms. That's most important. As I fully agree, PLI, Make in India, as well as local content in manufacturing, ICB, in-country value addition, certainly, etc. will help. The third question I have is from Professor Amal Roy. Questions to Mr. Gautam Chakrabarti. Quality education, whether rural areas literacy need, current rate is sufficient, they are low, whether, how can we improve upon? Higher education, practical, career oriented, is it okay? Skill oriented and scientific research. So whether our education system is suitable for these four specific points which you have raised.
Well, if you wanted a simple answer to a complex question, it is not. It is not up to the mark.
Excuse me,
But-
sir.
Yes.
This should be the last question because we are running out of time.
Yes. So, therefore, the important thing is, but what the IITs and the institutions of higher learning have contributed is significantly, is well known. Some of your heads of corporates of the largest companies in USA are people who have been trained in this country and who have come from those institutions. Yes, basic education has to be improved clearly, because that helps the primary skilling of the workforce. Otherwise, we will not be able to get the kind of workers that we need for manning. Industry 4.0 is very good to talk about, but you need people who will be able to operate that. So yes, a lot of effort has to be put on this. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank Jadavpur alumni for this opportunity for me as well as my fellow panelists. It has been a very interesting subject, and really subject of the topic is today's requirement. We need to certainly focus on enhancing our GDP to $10 trillion to $40 trillion by 2047. It's a beginning. Thank you. Thank you for Jadavpur alumni for this great initiative. Thank you.
Thank you, panelists. So I would thank you very much, panelists. So we can continue with the question answer sessions during the lunch, if you please. So attention everyone, we will go for a lunch break now. I can see everybody hungry. So